What happened when an undercover CEO walked into his own outdoor store and uncovered a hidden web of greed, betrayal, and lost trust? You're about to find out. Welcome back, thoughtful listeners. You truly have a gift for appreciating stories that celebrate courage, redemption, and the fight for what's right. Today's story is about a founder who refused to let his family's legacy be tarnished, even when it meant tearing down everything he had built to start again. Get ready for a journey through deception, heartbreak, and ultimate renewal. You won't want to miss what happens next. Logan Barrett stood alone in his office, staring at the faded black and white photograph hanging above his desk. It showed a young man, his father, standing proudly in front of the original Summit Outfitters store, a modest, wood-paneled shop with a hand-painted sign and a dusty old Jeep parked out front. Logan could still hear his father's voice, plain and steady, drilling into him lessons that had nothing to do with profit margins and everything to do with trust. "You don't sell gear, son," his father used to say. "You sell the promise that when people step into the wild, what you gave them won't let them down." Those words shaped Logan's life. Over the years, Summit Outfitters had grown from that little mountain town store to a chain that dotted the region, still family-owned, still grounded in the values he was raised on. Or at least, that's what Logan had believed. But lately, cracks had begun to show. Loyal customers who once shook his hand and called him family now sent cautious emails about hidden charges and surprise fees, and that, there were whispers of aggressive sales tactics, rushed paperwork, and confusing policies that left people feeling cheated. At first, Logan dismissed them, surely growing pains from expansion, or isolated bad apples he could easily weed out. But the complaints kept coming, and with every one, Logan felt something inside him erode. Not just anger, but shame. The idea that his father's legacy, his family's name, could be twisted into something slick, soulless, and predatory gnawed at him more than he cared to admit. Late at night, after the emails stopped pinging and the lights dimmed, Logan sat in his office with the old photograph and asked himself the hardest question a man could face. Had he taken his eye off the ball, trusted the wrong people, grown too comfortable counting profits instead of keeping promises? He knew one thing for certain: he couldn't fix what he didn't see for himself. That was why, instead of sending auditors or firing off stern memos, Logan made a decision that would have made his old man proud. He would go undercover, disappeared into his own business as an ordinary customer, see the truth through the eyes of the people he'd built it for, and if he found rot beneath the surface, he wouldn't patch it. He'd tear it out, roots and all. Straightening the photo frame with a heavy hand, Logan made a silent vow. Summit Outfitters would either stand for the right things again, or it wouldn't stand at all. Logan Barrett moved through his garage with a sense of quiet purpose, gathering the tools for his transformation. He pulled out an old flannel shirt, frayed at the cuffs, softened by years of campfires and trail hikes, and shrugged into it like slipping back into a former life. From a dusty trunk, he retrieved his father's battered ranger hat and the scuffed hiking boots he hadn't worn since his last backcountry trip a decade ago. Each item told a story of simpler times, when a man's word mattered and a handshake sealed a deal. Now, they would serve as his armor. He couldn't walk into Summit Outfitters as Logan Barrett, founder and CEO. That name still carried weight in town, despite how long it had been since he worked a register or pitched a tent for a demo. People would recognize him. Employees might straighten up and hide the truth. No, he needed to be invisible. Just another tired, unassuming old-timer looking for new gear. Thus was born Walter Pierce, a retired park ranger who had spent the better part of his life guiding others through forests, mountains, and rivers, and now needed reliable equipment for his own adventures. Logan practiced the backstory out loud as he packed, lived 2 towns over, recently widowed, planning one last cross-country hike to honor a promise made to his late wife. The details tasted bittersweet on his tongue, but the sadness was easy enough to summon. There was plenty of it bottled up already. Before stepping into the world as Walter, Logan removed every trace of his usual self. The Rolex stayed home. He swapped it for a scratched Timex. His wedding band, once a beacon of stability, he tucked into a drawer for safekeeping. Even his walk changed. A slight slouch, a slower, more deliberate gait, just enough to blend in. As he zipped up a battered backpack, the same one he carried on his first solo trip with his father, Logan paused and looked around. This wasn't just about catching a few bad employees or tweaking some policies. It was about something bigger. Protecting a legacy, a way of doing business that respected people instead of preying on them. When he finally climbed into his dusty old truck and pulled onto the main road leading to Summit Outfitters, Logan Barrett left behind the title, the success, and the safety of ignorance. Walter Pierce, retired ranger, was going hunting. Not for game, but for the truth. The moment Logan Barrett, no Walter Pierce, pushed open the doors of Summit Outfitters, he felt it. A shift, almost imperceptible, but real. The warm, neighborly hum that once filled his store had been replaced by something colder, sharper. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, reflecting off polished floors and digital displays advertising limited-time offers and must-have protection plans. The staff, clad in crisp, branded polos, moved with an energy that seemed more frantic than friendly, more calculated than casual. Logan walked slowly through the aisles, letting the weight of the place settle on his shoulders. Gone were the old touches he'd insisted on years ago, the cozy wood panel accents, the hand-painted signs by local artists, the smell of leather and pine that once made the store feel like an extension of the outdoors. In its place was a slick, efficient machine designed to move products as fast as possible. He spotted Tyler Vance across the room, holding court near the checkout counters. Even without knowing his face, Logan could pick him out instantly, the sharp suit, the Bluetooth earpiece, the too-polished smile. Tyler radiated the kind of corporate charm that sold stock options and quarterly profits, not sleeping bags and hiking boots. Logan watched him pat a customer on the back with oily enthusiasm, steering him toward a towering display of overpriced adventure insurance packs with the ease of a seasoned predator guiding prey. Nearby, a young couple browsed a camping tent. Logan paused within earshot as a salesman, no more than 22, skillfully turned their questions into fears. Well, sure, this tent's good for light rain, but if you're serious about safety out there, you'll want the premium rainproofing upgrade. It's only a few hundred extra. The couple hesitated, visibly uncomfortable, but the salesman pressed on, expertly keeping the pressure just shy of unbearable. Logan's jaw tightened. This wasn't salesmanship, it was manipulation, dressed up in a Summit Outfitters polo shirt. Worse, the customers, people who trusted the brand, who came looking for honest advice, were walking straight into it, unaware that the values Summit once stood for had been quietly swapped out for short-term profit. He tugged the brim of his ranger hat lower, feeling the old fire spark inside him. Something was rotten here, deeper than he'd feared, and he was just getting started. Logan drifted closer to the fishing gear section, blending in among the weekend browsers, when he first spotted him. An older man in a worn denim jacket, thick work boots, and a cap that bore the faded emblem of the 82nd Airborne. He was standing at the counter, papers in hand, a small boy by his side whose wide eyes darted excitedly between shelves of tackle boxes and camping backpacks. Logan instinctively slowed, his attention sharpening. The man was Samuel Harris, a retired veteran from the next town over, trying to buy equipment for his grandson's first scouting trip. Logan caught fragments of the conversation, a basic starter tent, a used fishing rod, some beginner gear, modest purchases made with care. Samuel spoke with the quiet pride of a man who had spent a lifetime earning everything he owned. Then came the pivot. The salesman, a slick young man with an eager smile, began layering on the extras. "You'll want our wilderness certification package, sir. It's mandatory now for outdoor safety compliance." Samuel looked confused. "Mandatory?" he asked, glancing down at his simple list. "Yes, sir," the salesman lied smoothly. "Just an extra $199.99. Can't let the little guy out there without proper protection, right?" He chuckled, like it was a harmless joke. Samuel hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. His grandson tugged at his sleeve, whispering something about wanting the sleeping bag they had picked out. Logan watched the moment, saw Samuel do the math in his head, saw the hope in the boy's face, and knew the war was raging behind those tired eyes. Say no and risk disappointing a child who'd been counting down the days for his first adventure. Say yes, and swallow the hit to a budget likely already stretched thin by retirement checks and rising costs. With a stiff nod, Samuel agreed, and the salesman grinned as he tapped away at the register. Logan caught the flash of predatory satisfaction behind the young man's polished exterior, and something inside him snapped. This wasn't sales. This wasn't helping customers live their dreams in the great outdoors. This was theft, dressed up in a uniform. And the worst part wasn't the extra $200. It was the shame Samuel tried to hide as he slid his debit card through the machine, pretending not to notice how fast his grandson's excitement dimmed into confusion. Logan clenched his fists in his pockets, his blood pounding in his ears. This wasn't just a breach of policy. It was a betrayal of every principle Summit Outfitters was built on. If Tyler Vance and his team could do this to a man like Samuel Harris, they could, and probably had, done it to dozens more. Logan Barrett knew, in that moment, that this investigation had just become a battle for the soul of his company. Logan lingered by the sleeping bags section, pretending to examine price tags while his mind churned. He needed more than outrage, he needed proof. And he couldn't gather it alone. That's when he noticed her, a young sales clerk in her early 20s, her Summit Outfitters polo slightly faded from too many shifts, her brown hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. Unlike the others who buzzed around customers like sharks scenting blood, Emma Ross moved differently. Quiet, patient, almost wary. Their first exchange was simple. Logan, still posing as Walter Pierce, asked for a recommendation on a sturdy but affordable backpack. Instead of immediately steering him toward the most expensive model, Emma gently asked questions. Where he was headed, how much weight he planned to carry, whether he needed something waterproof. There was no pressure in her voice, no hustle, just honest curiosity and a desire to help. As she led him through a few options, Logan lowered his voice and casually asked, "Is it always this busy with all these specials and certifications?" He watched her reaction closely. Emma hesitated, glancing around as if to make sure no managers were nearby. Then, almost imperceptibly, she shook her head. "Not like it used to be," she said quietly. "Things changed about a year ago." Sensing a crack in the wall of silence, Logan pressed gently. Emma didn't say much, not yet, but in her lowered gaze and the tension in her posture, Logan recognized the weight of someone caught between survival and integrity. She didn't trust him yet, but she wasn't fully part of the system either. Before he left the aisle, Emma slipped him a small card, ostensibly a customer service feedback form, but scribbled across the bottom in faint pencil was a note. "If you have questions about charges, ask for itemized receipts. Not everything matches." Logan tucked the card into his pocket, his respect for the young woman growing. In Emma Ross, Logan had found something precious amid the rot, an honest heart still beating inside the corrupted machine. He didn't know yet how much she could, or would, reveal. But for the first time that day, he felt a flicker of hope. He wasn't alone in this fight. Someone inside Summit still remembered what the store was supposed to stand for. Over the next several days, Logan moved carefully through Summit Outfitters, playing the part of the quiet, indecisive customer while secretly gathering everything he needed. His old hiking pack concealed a slim voice recorder, and every conversation he had with salesmen, clerks, even the finance desk, became part of his growing archive. It didn't take long before the patterns became undeniable. Employees were coached to dangle low starting prices, hook customers emotionally to a dream of outdoor adventure, and then, once excitement clouded their judgment, slip in hidden fees under the guise of mandatory safety upgrades or required certification. In whispered conversations near the break room, Logan overheard clerks joking about boosting the bonus pool by upselling unnecessary warranties. One afternoon, lingering near the service counter, he caught two employees laughing over a new father who had spent almost a month's rent outfitting his son for a simple weekend camping trip. By the time he realized the real cost, he was already picturing those father-son memories. One chuckled, "Pride's a salesman's best friend." Logan clenched his fists until his knuckles whitened. Emma Ross quietly became his inside guide. Risking her job, she slipped him copies of altered receipts, training manuals with suggested talking points designed to obscure true pricing, and even a company memo outlining a strategy called emotional lock-in, where clerks were instructed to deepen a customer's emotional attachment to gear before disclosing the full cost. Each new piece of evidence painted a sickening picture. This wasn't the work of a few rogue salesmen. It was a systematic operation, masterminded by Tyler Vance, designed to prey on the hopes and dreams of Summit's loyal customers. Worse yet, the internal records showed how employees who resisted these tactics were punished with dead-end shifts or quietly pushed out. Good people like Emma lived in fear every day. By the end of the week, Logan's pack was heavy not with camping gear, but with proof. Audio recordings, printed memos, customer contracts, and sales scripts that would be impossible for management to explain away. And with every scrap of evidence he collected, Logan's quiet anger sharpened into a blade. Summit Outfitters hadn't just lost its way. It had been hijacked by people who treated trust as a weakness to exploit. Logan Barrett knew he had enough to act. Now he just had to make sure the fall of the guilty was swift, public, and unforgettable. Logan knew he had only one chance to bring the truth into the light, and it had to be done so publicly, so undeniably, that no one could bury it with spin or excuses. Timing would be everything. He chose a Saturday afternoon when Summit Outfitters hosted its monthly Family Adventure Day, an event designed to draw heavy foot traffic with raffles, gear demonstrations, and kids' activities. The store would be packed with loyal customers, staff, and even a few local reporters covering the event for the community news. In the early morning hours, Logan carefully reviewed every piece of evidence one last time. Audio recordings were clipped into a ready-to-play file on his phone. Photocopied memos were neatly stacked in his battered hiking pack, labeled and highlighted. Emails and falsified receipts were printed and secured in a thick binder he planned to present directly to the authorities after the dust settled. Every detail was covered. There would be no room for escape. But before heading to the store, Logan made 2 quiet calls, one to the local sheriff, a longtime family friend explaining he might need backup if things turned ugly, and another to Nate Dawson, the former assistant manager who had been fired for refusing to play along with Tyler Vance's schemes. Nate's voice, rough with emotion, promised he'd be there if Logan needed him. Pulling up to Summit Outfitters in his dusty truck, Logan felt the weight of what was about to unfold. His hands tightened on the steering wheel for a moment, steadying himself. This wasn't just about cleaning the house. It was about standing up for every customer who had been misled, every employee who had been bullied into silence, and every promise he and his father had made to this community decades ago. Inside the store, the event was in full swing. Families wandered the aisles with popcorn in hand. Kids tried out fishing rods in inflatable pools. Salesmen buzzed like bees, hunting their next bonus. Logan slipped in quietly, still wearing the gear of Walter Pierce, but he knew that disguise would fall away soon enough. As the clock ticked closer to noon, the scheduled start of the customer raffle, Logan made his move. He approached the main PA microphone near the front counter, nodded to Emma, who had quietly positioned herself nearby with copies of the evidence, and cleared his throat. The first crack of thunder in the coming storm was about to sound. The microphone crackled to life, drawing curious glances from customers and staff alike. Logan straightened his back, letting the years fall away, and spoke in a voice that carried the quiet authority of a man who had nothing left to fear. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his voice cutting clean through the hum of chatter. "My name is Logan Barrett. Some of you may know me, some of you may not, but I built Summit Outfitters with my own 2 hands. And today, I'm here to talk about what's been happening behind these walls." The ripple that moved through the room was electric. Heads turned, conversations stopped mid-sentence. Logan reached into his pack and pulled out the binder, setting it on the front counter with a heavy thud that seemed to shake the very floorboards. In clear, deliberate tones, Logan began playing clips from the recordings. Tyler Vance's smooth voice filled the store, bragging about manipulating customers, laughing about burying extra fees in contracts, mocking gullible old-timers who wouldn't realize they were being scammed until it was too late. A hush fell over the crowd, broken only by gasps and murmured outrage. Customers edged closer, employees exchanged nervous glances. Some looked ashamed, others looked terrified. At the back of the room, Tyler himself appeared, his face a frozen mask of horror as he realized what was happening. He made a move toward the stage, but the sheriff, standing quietly near the entrance, intercepted him with a firm hand on his shoulder. Logan didn't stop. He displayed the photocopied memos outlining the emotional lock-in strategy. He read aloud emails where honest employees were reprimanded for refusing to upcharge customers, and when he finished, he said simply, "This isn't the Summit Outfitters I promised you. It isn't the Summit Outfitters my father dreamed of. And starting today, it won't be tolerated for another second." The store was dead silent for a beat, and then a smattering of applause began from a cluster of longtime customers, swelling into a full-throated ovation as people realized the weight of what they had just witnessed. Some employees, including Emma Ross, stepped forward with their own evidence, emboldened by Logan's courage. Tyler tried to protest, blustering about misunderstandings and taking things out of context, but Logan cut him off coldly. "Save it for the lawyers." At a nod from Logan, the sheriff escorted Tyler from the premises. His expensive loafers squeaking against the polished floor, Logan turned back to the crowd, heart pounding but steady. It wasn't just about exposing the rot anymore. It was about planting something new, something worth believing in again. With Tyler Vance removed, and the last echoes of the confrontation fading, Logan Barrett turned his focus to the harder work ahead, rebuilding Summit Outfitters not just in image, but in spirit. The next morning, before the doors opened to the public, Logan gathered the entire staff in the main showroom, now cleared of its flashy promotional displays. The sun streamed through the tall windows, casting long beams of light across the floor, as if washing the place clean. Logan stood in front of them, not as a CEO behind a mahogany desk, but as a man asking for their help to rebuild what had been broken. He spoke plainly. Every sale from the past 18 months would be audited. Every customer charged hidden fees would be personally contacted, refunded in full, and offered a sincere apology. Employees who had participated in the scams were given two choices: come forward now, admit everything and help make things right, or be terminated and reported if found hiding misconduct. There would be no middle ground. Integrity would no longer be a suggestion, it would be the foundation. Nate Dawson, the former assistant manager unjustly fired for refusing to comply with Tyler's corruption, was reinstated with full honors and promoted to Director of Ethical Sales. Emma Ross was officially named Customer Advocate Supervisor, tasked with ensuring transparency at every level of service. A new set of principles, titled the Summit Oath, was printed and hung proudly by the entrance, pledging honesty, fairness, and respect for every customer who walked through the door. But Logan didn't stop there. He created the Harris Family Adventure Fund in honor of Samuel Harris and his grandson, offering scholarships and free gear packages to local families so that no child would ever miss an outdoor experience because of financial hardship. Summit Outfitters began to transform not into a newer, glossier version of itself, but into something older, purer, and better. Word spread quickly. Former customers returned, some with cautious hope, others with tears in their eyes, when they realized this wasn't a marketing stunt. It was real. Logan Barrett had not just rooted out the rot, he had restored the soul of his company. As he watched employees greeting customers with honest smiles and children tugging their parents toward the camping aisle with wide-eyed excitement, Logan knew Summit was once again living up to the promise his father had made all those years ago. 6 months later, Summit Outfitters was almost unrecognizable, not because it looked flashier or more modern, but because it had reclaimed something far rarer: trust. On a bright spring morning, the store hosted its first annual Community Adventure Day, a celebration of everything Summit now stood for. Families filled the lot, browsing gear without being hounded by upsells. chatting with staff who now prided themselves on honest advice instead of commission tricks. The Harris Family Adventure Fund had already helped 24 kids attend their first summer camps, outfitted with quality gear provided at cost or gifted outright. Standing near the entrance, Logan Barrett watched it all unfold with a quiet sense of satisfaction. He saw Samuel Harris and his grandson browsing the fishing section, the boy animatedly pointing out rods while Samuel grinned wide, no hesitation or worry shadowing his face. Logan tipped his hat to them, and Samuel nodded back. A simple gesture, but one that meant the world. The new employees, many of whom had once been disillusioned or fearful, now wore Summit's logo with pride. Nate Dawson led a group of new hires through a tour, pausing often to explain not just how to sell gear, but why it mattered to sell it honestly. Emma Ross manned the customer service desk, warmly greeting each visitor and personally reviewing receipts to ensure every purchase was transparent and fair. The Summit oath framed behind her wasn't just a wall decoration, it had become a living promise. The local press, once skeptical, now ran features on how Summit Outfitters had become a model for ethical business practices. More importantly, the customers noticed. Sales rebounded, slowly at first but steadily as word spread that Summit was a place where you could shop with confidence and be treated like family. Logan knew challenges would come. There would always be temptation in the margins, always pressure to chase easy money. But now the foundation was stronger than ever, built not on flashy marketing but on relationships, respect, and doing the right thing when no one was watching. Inside his modest office, moved back down to the sales floor where he could hear the laughter and life of the store, Logan placed a new photo next to the old one of his father. It showed Samuel Harris and his grandson proudly holding up their first catch, a gleaming trout that seemed almost to smile back at the camera. Beneath it, Logan added a simple plaque that read, "Trust is earned, one honest adventure at a time." As he stepped back onto the showroom floor, Logan Barrett knew the road ahead would still have rough patches. But Summit Outfitters was finally back where it belonged, not just in business, but at the heart of its community. The story of Logan Barrett and Summit Outfitters teaches a timeless lesson. Real success is built on trust, not profit. It's easy in business or in life to lose sight of values when short-term gains beckon. Logan's journey reminds us that integrity must never be sacrificed, even when no one is watching. When Logan disguised himself and walked among his customers, he rediscovered the simple truths his father once taught him, that honesty, respect, and service to others are the foundation of lasting relationships. He also showed that redemption is possible, not by hiding mistakes, but by confronting them openly, making amends, and rebuilding with courage and humility. In a world where cutting corners is often rewarded, Summit Outfitters' rebirth proves that doing the right thing is not just morally right, it's good business. Loyalty, community pride, and true leadership are earned by standing firm when it's hardest and by lifting others up instead of exploiting them. Ultimately, Logan Barrett's story is a call to every business owner, leader, and everyday person. Your legacy isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in the trust you leave behind.